Something that you talked a little bit about made me think of the fact that almost every single pre-law student or law student that I've interacted with is very much like the overachiever type A personality. You said, oh, maybe you didn't study enough, or maybe you didn't have the right studying materials. I feel like even somebody who gets like, you could probably attest to this, even somebody who gets in like in the 170s, I feel like could still feel that way on the big day of, oh, well, maybe I could get another 2 points if I study for another 4 months. Do you feel like that's worth that investment when you've already maybe improved, say, 10 to 15 points and you've done a good job? Is there any kind of cap on like when you should be like happy with your score, satisfied with the work you did, and kind of move on with your application from there?
That's a great question. So there's a couple pieces to it. One of them is that even if you can improve a single point or two more, it's crazy to say this, but just a single point or two could make the difference between a yes or a no in getting accepted. And then it can make the difference in another $5, $10, $20,000 in scholarship money. It's nuts that just one little number can make the difference, but it's real. That's how it works, because law school admission officers, they have to consider the rankings, the US News rankings, which are ever important, despite the fact that they have a lot of problems, but their jobs rest on that. And so that weighs into whether they accept you or not, or whether they have scholarship money that they can afford to give you or not. And so if it takes another 3 or 4 months of studying, but gives you $20,000 more per year, or gets you into a top 14 versus when you wouldn't have gotten it otherwise, the ROI over the course of your career could make that worth it, even if it seems crazy to think about. Then the other side of this is that studying harder versus studying right. So people, type A personalities, overachievers, they might do exam after exam after exam. There's 86 numbered exams right now. You could do all of them and measure your results and obsess over them with spreadsheets and such. But the question becomes, are you getting insights out of that work, or is it more of a churn and burn strategy? So you could study smarter next time around, and that alone could unlock the difference. And then 1 or 2 points more in the 170s can be huge, especially if you're going from 169 to 170. That's a lot different than going from a 151 to a 152.
Sure. I personally, when I hit a 169, I was like, this is good for me. This is where I'm feeling like I'm going to get into the schools that I want with the scholarship and the competition that I want. And so I decided not to retake it. So I'm interested by your answer to that question, because I feel like it's so dependent on the goals of the test taker. Because I'm sure that if I, studied for another 6 months, took it again in September, I took mine in June last year, I probably could have gotten into the 170, 171 range. But for me, it didn't feel like worth it for where I wanted to be. And I'm actually most likely going to be going to a top 20 school with a full ride and living stipend at a 169. So what would you say to maybe a student like me, or somebody who's taking practice tests in that range? Would the same advice apply?
Yeah, well, the fact that I assume that maybe your GPA was pretty good if you're looking at top 20s with a full ride, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
So that's one piece of it. If your GPA was significantly lower than the medians, then the LSAT score has more importance placed upon it.
Sure.
The other thing I can say is that there's a margin of error. There's a score band of 3.5 points now on either end. So let's say you got a 169. That could be a 172.5 or 173. Let's say next time you took it, even if everything else remained the same, could be a 166 on another day, even if everything else remained the same. So let's say someone looking into the future right now, they're thinking about taking it in June this year. You could take it in June and then take it 6 weeks later in mid-July, and not even do much, if any, studying between June and July, but just by random luck of the draw, you could do 3 or 4 points better. And so I would say maybe you just do a timed exam a week over the course of those 6 weeks. You could do 3 points better. And if you don't, so what? Law schools will still only take the highest. So a retake doesn't necessarily require a ton of extra work if you already have a strong foundation. But to speak on the other side in terms of not retaking, you don't want to be a perfectionist. This is one of those things where it's like a piece of writing. Writing is never perfect, right? You just decide that it's good enough, and then you walk away and move on with your life.
Yeah.
but you could polish the same 500-word essay for years and years and years if you want. And
Been there.
and you could obsess over word choice and use the thesaurus and have editors and folks read it over and such. But at a certain point, you decide, you know what, this is good enough, and you move on with your life. You know, it's funny. I was talking with a law career expert the other day, and she was talking about how you want to carve out half an hour a day for networking. And so if you're obsessing over the LSAT, you're not doing that networking work, or you're not working on your personal statement. You're getting your letters of recommendation in line. So there's lots of other things to do in life aside from the LSAT, and not everybody needs to get a perfect 180 to move on to law school. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.